Okay, we're live for a kind of an impromptu talk. Well, I had 3 hours warning, which is for me is impromptu with Andrew about. Well, I'll let you tell us what we're going to talk about.
Okay, so I guess today I want to talk about.
Hold on. Okay, we're live for a. Hold on. I'm sorry. That always happens to me. Okay.
Is it good now?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. So anyway, today or in our last discussion speed, we kind of went over a one common misconception from creationists about genetic information and why mutations can't quote unquote generate new information.
Right.
We went all the way with Erica and Leo and such. And today, I kind of want to continue that kind of discussion, but go over a different misconception. So the one I want to go over with you often hear this with creationists, like it's kind of foundational to their worldview, basically.
Yep.
Or it's kind of two misconceptions or misrepresentations of science rolled into one. The first one is that evolutionists, quote unquote, and creationists are both have the same facts and are just interpreting it differently.
Yep.
And the other one that because of different interpretations, it's both historical science rather than operational or observational science, or however they put it.
Yep.
So I feel like that would be a good topic to go over with, like what does it mean to observe something, and can we really study the past, I guess.
Okay. So I think I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
We went over some of this before too. It's sort of, it's something I've been thinking about. The information aspect, we might return to that a little bit later too, because I've got that's kind of sticking in my throat too. Some stuff I've heard lately about them, but and let me see if I can rearrange. Oh my goodness, why would it do that? Why would it stop my screen? I don't know why it stopped my screen. Weird. Okay, you see the screen now. Okay, yeah. So here we are, at the present, right?
Right.
The big old present, and we got the past. So if I set up a beaker here and I add some ingredients to it here and set up some instruments here, and then right here, I basically come up with a hypothesis. We're still looking at the past, even if that is 5 minutes, right?
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Because and the other thing is this bullshit of were you there? Well, if you're looking through a microscope, you're not really quite there,
Yeah, it's a light travel time essentially, right?
Well, you're looking through instrumentation, and when we check to see what is in the flask at time, here we go, T, we'll call this T0 because this is our setup time.
Okay.
And then we have T1 here, which is where our experiment's complete. When we are at T1, okay, and we measure, what is in the flask, we're using instruments like litmus paper or, oh God, what the hell? I can't even, chromatography, and we're using instruments, right? And we're not actually observing it. We have instruments that we can rely on, and we can rely on these instruments because of consistency. Because we know these instruments always do a certain thing because we did experiments on them to make instruments. So, right. I mean, it's kind of weak to say, oh, because you weren't there or you're not looking at it directly. The only thing you can look at directly is your hand,
Well, even then, you're seeing, for one, you're seeing your hand as the light left it like a nanosecond ago. So, which right. is it's all arbitrary at this point. And I kind of get what you're saying though. Like, if you're looking in a flask with all these microbes, for instance, like you're not actually swimming with the microbes. Like, so you're not really there per se. You're just, right. And this is what I think the key point is, that I would say that we're not observing something in science, or at least not directly observing it. Rather, we're making an observation.
And
I
we're
think
we're, we're making inferences based on consistency, on what do they call the historical geology, where everything is
uniformitarianism.
uniformitary? Yeah, which is something that I'd never even heard about until I started talking with creationists,
Yeah.
because it just never comes up, because shit is uniform. Because if it wasn't, well, the sad thing about humans that I want to point out is that we can't even observe our own asses without an instrument, right? I mean, who can look at their ass? Well, some people might be flexible enough to do that, but I can't. So, so basically, humans, as far as direct observation, are not extremely useful. What's useful about us is that we assume this uniformity of laws, and we assume. Well, you don't. I guess you have to assume that. I mean, it could change at any moment, but has it changed? I don't think so. So I mean, I don't see the problem. So now when we're looking at going back in the past to last week, which the police department always does in forensics, right?
Right.
Kind of go back. The IRS might look back last year, right? And they're making all kinds of assumptions about uniformitarianism. And then we go all the way back, and like, how far can we look back? Like when you're looking at an ecosystem, particular ecosystem, you're looking back, 10, 20 years, 30 years. If you're looking at an iron formation, you're looking back 30 billion years, and you're making guesses about, how it formed. And so what is their complaint? I mean, how does their complaint work exactly?
Well, I think it, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure, because they word it weird. But essentially, I think it's basically what you're saying, that none of us were there, therefore it's not science. Therefore, we have to rely on a historical account, and which is the best historical account. And I'm like, that's not really how observation works. And this is the point I want to make, that that just because you can't directly observe something or see something happening right before your eyes doesn't mean you can't make observations. Like I can't, in a simplistic sense, like you can't observe the past, basically, because you can't see it. But in a more scientific sense, I think you can observe the past, in the sense that you can collect information and make inferences based on that information. Like
yeah, and they're complaining about I just woke up, my coffee hasn't hit yet, but it's called underdetermination.
Okay.
So the past is underdetermined. Sometimes the present is underdetermined. Like, for instance, it's snowing outside my window right now. Well, maybe it isn't snowing. Maybe my roof guy is out there sweeping off the top of the roof, right? I mean, you can come up with, maybe some crazy neighbor has a snowblower and he's blowing snow into my yard. There's all these possibilities. But I live in Minnesota, and it's December, and it's pretty. If I walk outside and take a look around, I mean, it's pretty hard to believe that my neighbor is managing to cover my entire neighborhood with some gigantic snowblower. But that's exactly what they want you to believe. They want you to believe that there is this giant human in the sky. He has this giant snowblower, and he's blowing snow across the entire neighborhood, right?
Yeah, and that's another good point, that like most of their explanations are ad hoc, in the sense that like they they accuse us of making uniformitarian assumptions, but it's not really an assumption in the traditional sense. It's more like I mean, I guess it's an assumption, but like, when you think about it, they haven't shown evidence to the contrary, or they haven't shown positive evidence that wouldn't be that wouldn't be uniform. So like it's Occam's razor in the sense that like you're going with the assumption, or sorry, the explanation that has the fewest assumptions inherent in it. And like, of course, that's which has more assumptions in it, that the world looks old because it is old, or the world looks old because it was created 5 seconds ago.
Right. So when they say that, you know, there are multiple ways that we can look at it, well, my answer to them is let's go back and look at time t0, right? Like, okay, let's look at the time we're living in right now that we know about. How many supernatural giant snowmen, how many giant frosties in the sky have we observed in the last, you know, in the last 100 years or 20 years? And so right now, what is happening is methodological naturalism, right?
Right.
So right now, and we observe nothing else. And they insist, oh, we don't believe the stories of near death and all that stuff. But even if those happen, they're extremely rare. So most of what happens in the world is all natural, and it's naturalism. So what we do, like at time t0 here, we assume that it's been naturalism from t0 to t1, or from time t1. And we assume that it's been naturalism from the time we set up at t-1, the time we started the experiment. And we assume it's naturalism to last week and last year. It is not. I mean, why don't these creationists go up and use the defense when the IRS audits them and finds that they hid, $50,000? Why don't they use the defense that God put it in my account? I mean, that would be a valid defense, right? If it's not a fucking valid defense for the IRS or for the judicial system, why is it valid for science to say God did it?
Because it's more relevant to them, essentially.
Yeah, and it's because
it's to be more specific, it's more relevant to the collection of creationism as a whole. Like it can be relevant to a single individual in terms of the IRS, but it's more relevant for science in terms of the general collection of whack jobs out there.
Yeah, well, the thing is that they already believe that happens. Okay, so they believe. Hang on a second, I'm having trouble with this. God damn it! I'm having trouble with my iPad. Okay, so how do we put this? So they have this proposition, right? So they have a proposition that, or a belief, basically. So they believe that there is this this God creature in the sky. So we'll call it GX, right? So they believe there's this God in the sky. Well, we're over here, and we have all these propositions. We have millions of them about science. We do not believe in that, right? So we don't believe in that. But now they believe in it. So they will say that up here, the reason all this stuff happened is because, God put the money in my bank account. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm the judge, and I don't believe that God put the money in your bank account. So, and you have to now they have to convince me that God did put the money in my bank account. And they will say to me, well, it's improbable that I put it in there because I'm an Uber driver and I could never make that much money. So how could I possibly put, 150,000 in my bank account? So they're trying to use science. Do you see what I'm getting at here? They're trying to use science to prove that it is impossible for it to have happened any other way, or impossible for it to have happened by naturalism, for it's impossible to happen any other way than by their God. So they're trying to, so they know that you don't believe in God, and they do. So God to them is a perfectly reasonable solution to this problem. They can say it's God. Okay, but we don't believe that. So they feel that they have to use all this gigantic body of, scientific literature, just tons and tons of stuff to prove to us that there is a God. And so that puts the burden of proof on them for intelligent design.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean like, and this gets into another good point, which is I guess, I mean, we've talked about this before about like the so-called naturalism of the gaps, basically, that like um, that we have this gap in our understanding, say abiogenesis, the Big Bang, time zero, whatnot, and therefore we're assuming that evolution did it, or that naturalistic causes did it. Well, we're not assuming that in a traditional sense. Like we're saying, I mean, like if you were to say that okay, let me backtrack for a sec. What does supernatural mean, right? It means
Right.
beyond the natural.
Yeah.
It means that it's not natural, that it can't be natural. Well, how do you know that can't be natural? Because there's a gap. Well, how do you know that's not something that you haven't thought of yet? Like it's there. I think this is the crux of any supernatural claim, basically, which is that we've only seen natural things that we can observe, and there might be supernatural things out there, but claiming that there's a gap in our understanding, um and saying, for instance, that, oh, God did it, that's assuming that God is the only possible way that result, that observation could have come about. um like they're assuming that everything that we know. I kind of like how one person on this video, I think her name was Eugenie Scott, put it, which is basically, just because something hasn't been explained doesn't mean that it's unexplainable. You know what I mean? It's an argument from ignorance. Oh, hey,
Yeah.
Leo.
Yeah, the thing, okay, before we leave this, like supernatural.
I
okay,
just got
when
to
you
say real quickly what Andrew said over like the last 30 seconds just fucking nailed it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think basically supernatural claims are essentially saying it can't be natural. It can't, like we haven't explained it naturally, therefore it can't, like it's so hard to crystallize my thoughts on this. I mean, do you have a better way to put it, Leo?
Yeah, you want to restate it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I will be right back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe it'll switch over on its own without me having to leave.
Okay, the problem I have with supernatural is the definition of supernatural and the examples from supernatural, and I'll show you where I'm going with this. Okay, so we have supernatural causes, and people throw that word around, and it really irritates me because they mean something that they're not honest about. Okay, now if in the natural world we have all of these things that sort of behave, you know, in a law-like manner. So we have all these law-like stuff, right? But say in one spot somewhere in the universe, we find this place where space-time is all messed up, where it's all curved and it doesn't work right, and causes happen after.
Well, it works. It's just irregular. It's all just irregular manifold.
Well, something not only irregular, but something really strange. Like all of a sudden, there's this one place where we find particles are being created, and they're spewing out into the universe. Right?
Are you talking about the quantum fields and curved space-times around black holes?
No, I'm not talking about anything we've ever found. I'm talking about we go.
Oh, you're okay. No, you're on a hypothetical. My bad.
Right, yeah. I'm on a hypothetical. So we go to a spot in the universe where all the laws break down. Well, the problem with natural causes is that when we look before the Big Bang and we look to, you know, to what's outside of this universe, if there is such a thing, when we look at this, the boundaries of what's natural break down. But here's the thing. Here's why they're lying to us. Here's why people that talk about the supernatural are, I wish there was a gentler way to put it, but they're fucking liars. Okay. What they really mean is that there is a human-like intelligence who does things, who, like, when you think about what is magic, you got a human who says a word. And when he says that word, he says, you are cursed. then you become cursed. Okay, so it's always it's a really limited idea. I mean, the idea I came up with is like batshit crazy physics could happen in the universe, and that would just be more natural to us because we would, we would try to define it. And suppose that there was no way to define it. Suppose it was like some weird, like quantum mechanics, where it was there was no way to predict it. I mean, crazy stuff happened, like whales appeared out of nowhere or whatever, right? Like Douglas Adams, right? But no, that's not what they mean. They mean that there is an intelligence. So they're always doing this anthropomorphic supernaturalism is what they mean, because their God is like us.
Yeah, essentially.
And that's what drives me crazy. And they won't admit it. And that's why they're damned liars, because they won't admit that what they really mean is that humans are the most special thing in the universe. And our intelligence is so special that basically God's intelligence is the same as ours. And the way we create things in our garage is the way that God creates universes. And that pisses me off that they're not honest about it, So anyway. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does.
Okay. What do you think?
Well, yeah, what do you think, Leo? Give us your opinion. Thanks for coming on, by the way.
Yeah. Anyway, so it just kind of drives me crazy that they want us. But what do you think of this, Leo? Where we have this, they have this, we have these experiments that we do. My keyboard just got in the way.
Does that say math?
Meth-nat. Yeah.
As in like methodological naturalism.
Meth lab.
No, I thought it said math. I was gonna say, we're doing the hard stuff today. The math.
Math. Yeah, we're doing math. No, methodological naturalism. So basically, they want us to believe in this proposition, and they want to use science to convince us that it has to be God, because there's no way that a natural universe could do things. Well, when we look at what we know about the natural universe, I mean, if we did find some crazy ass place in the universe where we couldn't predict things, would we say that a human like God did it? Or would we say that no, the laws of the universe had broken down?
We have places like that. They're called singularities.
Yeah.
And I noticed that creationists don't generally posit something supernatural at the core of a black hole. They just say, physics breaks down. We don't have a theory of quantum gravity yet. We can't explain it. But when it comes to like a singularity in biology, which I guess you could call a biogenesis, it's no. This was God. It had to be God. There's literally no other. No, it's just so hard to explain, and we haven't really gotten there yet. That automatically makes it a God. There's no way that we just lack an understanding of some of the more intricate parts of our reality, because we're actually a relatively young species, and we obviously can't know everything, and there's always going to be gaps in our knowledge. No, it couldn't be any of that. It's God, 100% God.
Yeah,
you don't see what they're being dishonest. Okay, Danny is in the chat, and he doesn't see what they're being dishonest about. Well, what they're being dishonest about is that they're really talking about a particular kind of supernatural. I have talked about a kind of supernatural, like singularities and whatever, where it's way beyond what we can naturally understand, where cause and effect break down, where time breaks down, where all of that. What they're talking about is a specific kind of supernatural that has to do with anthropic intelligence or anthropomorphic intelligence.
Yeah,
I combine anthropocentric and anthropomorphic into anthropic.
Yeah, I think the kind of supernatural you're talking about is basically where they're saying it can't be natural, therefore it must be naturally more natural than we can naturally describe. Like it's like you said, it's a giant human in the sky essentially. Like
Yes.
it can't get more natural than that, and yet it has. It's like a combination between the supernatural and human naturalism.
Which is minds are non-natural. Yeah, that's true.
That makes no sense. How does something that occurs in the natural world, how could anybody consider that non-natural?
Yeah,
That makes no
that's
sense to me
one.
whatsoever. Has anybody ever observed a mind that's not in the natural world and interacting with the natural world and made of natural things?
Has anyone ever observed a mind make something like a table without hammers and wood and
And material stuff?
and
Yeah.
hands and eyes and senses? We've never observed this mind make anything.
So there's basically no precedent for supernatural, at least not
Yeah.
yet.
We don't even have to say that there isn't a supernatural. I mean, I would say that being a strict naturalist, but I can grant that we don't know. There could be a supernatural.
There could be.
It just, at least as far as we know, it does absolutely nothing in our reality. It would be a completely different realm, completely separate from ours, doesn't interact with ours in any measurable or detectable way, but it could still exist. But I would also state that because, given what I've just said, which is essentially what the supernatural is said to be, except that it can interact with our reality, is that it's now indistinguishable from the same thing, the same X, but it not existing at all. And that's the problem with supernatural. Right. How do you define the difference between X being supernatural and X actually just not existing? There is no fundamental ontological difference. And there certainly isn't an epistemological difference.
Now, what Danny's been talking about, okay, he says that, they're talking about this immaterial mind. That would be the difference between our mind, which is embodied, and God's mind. So they've basically taken what we know about our mind and they've extrapolated it into this snowman in the sky.
Yeah.
Snowman in this giant frosty man
in the sky. Snowman in the sky. That's where I'm gonna go when I die.
And
when I die and they lay me to rest, I'm gonna go to the place that's the. I'm sorry.
What is that?
Oh, great.
Is that the band?
Oh shit! Who is that? It's Spirit in the Sky. I can't think. I want to say Doobie Brothers, but I don't think that's correct.
No, it's some. I think it's some is some kind of like one-off.
Hold on, let me go to YouTube and look it up.
Oh boy, Danny is.
Norm. I think it's Norman Greenbaum.
Oh wow.
I think if that's the one that I'm thinking of. You've never heard that song? Oh
no.
God.
Oh really? Spirit in the Sky.
Hey, don't ask me about music. I am very narrow on music.
Oh, God.
Anyway, so Leo, I want to ask you a question related to this topic, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Don't never be afraid to ask questions. Questions make the world go round.
Yeah, that's true. So I guess my question would be, how would you personally define observation, and if there's a difference between visual observation and observation as in like just gathering information about the world?
Yeah, I would say there's a difference. Obviously, visual observation is just using the eyes to see something. To me, observation, as it's related to specifically science, is essentially saying we are interacting with this state or this system in some way, shape, or form that allows us to reliably and corroboratively develop knowledge about the state of affairs of this state or this system, which in turn gives us knowledge about the particular properties that it has, and that we can then define it as being extant in space-time. So if something doesn't meet that definition, it ultimately becomes ontologically indistinguishable from something that doesn't exist at all.
Right. So you would say that like say I take this big amorphous blob of X material and I poke at it and it starts jiggling around like it doesn't care or anything like that. Like that would be an observation in science.
Yes. Like for instance, when we observe elementary particles, we do not actually see this, what most people think of, this tiny little ball just kind of no, that's not what we see. What we see are the tracks or the traces in fields that these particles took. Particles are not objects.
Yeah.
But we can still observe them. And that's a fact. You can go ask any particle physicist. Elementary particles are not objects. You cannot call it an object. But they exist. They're physical. We can measure them. So we know of things that technically aren't objects. Quantum fields aren't material. They're physical, but they're not material. but we can still detect them and measure them. So there are things that are not material. There is, and I would argue that at least in the context that we're speaking now, but there are other contexts, material and physical do have different definitions. But quantum fields are not material because they're not made up of anything. They're just vacuum fields of energy, but they're still physical. We can still measure them and describe them.
Yeah,
So
like,
if the mind is something that's not physical, is immaterial and supernatural, if it interacts with the natural world, we should be able to detect that in some way. And we
Yeah,
can't. All we can detect is the brain doing things and correlatively doing things to the mind. So if you change the brain, you change what the mind does. That comports with a physicalist model. It doesn't
yeah,
comport in the sense of corroborating a model with non-physical views of the mind, in my
yeah.
opinion.
Something can be made out of something cannot be made out of mass and energy, but you can still interact with it and call it tangible or physical or in the broadest sense, right?
Exactly. Why
Yeah.
can't we do this with the mind? Why can't we do this with anything supernatural? And
Yeah,
the one thing I wanted to clarify is that when I've said this before, I've had a lot of people say, well, do you think quantum fields are supernatural? And I said, no, they're physical. They're natural. They're a part of the natural world.
Yeah, there's. I invited Danny, by the way.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Because he's having a problem with us how we're viewing this immaterial mind, and we're not ready to get into that whole talk yet, though, Dan. Huh?
I said
What?
don't send the link out too much, though.
I know. I'm sorry, Andrew. I said I wouldn't do this, didn't I?
No, it's okay as long as we just have like Leo and yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Leo and Danny and Mutable and
Guys, how are y'all? So let's just grant that y'all are right for a second. Okay, let's just grant that.
Hold it. Right about what?
Right about the mind, that it's material, that that I can grant all of what you're saying, right? What I want to contest is the dishonesty claim, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't need to argue for the moment that the mind is immaterial, right? I'm just saying that they understand minds to be non-natural, okay? So let's just say that that's a false proposition, okay? Now, when their argument is this, that if minds are in the category of being immaterial, right, and that if there's a cause to the universe, and we understand the universe as being all material, okay, that means that anything prior to the universe, right, cannot be of the universe, because the universe, the idea of causa sui, right, self-cause, is contradictory. For something to cause itself, it would have to exist first to bring itself into existence. That's contradictory. So whatever causes the universe, that's to say causes everything that's material, has to be immaterial. And then they're going to point to two categories of things that are immaterial under their view: minds or abstract objects. Okay, so now they understand their own minds to be immaterial. Now, what makes them human as opposed to non-human is in what kind of body they're in, right? Most Christians are also going to think that certain animals are going to have minds, okay? And what distinguishes, one of the things that they distinguish is between a human being and, let's say, a dog, right, is that the mind is in a different, it's embodied differently, right? So there are different physical constraints, they might say, or physiology with respect to a horse's mind and a human mind, and that's how we distinguish a human being versus like a horse being or whatever, right? So when they say God, they're talking about a mind that's disembodied, because to have a body is to imply a material thing, okay? But prior to the universe, there was no material thing, right? So there's a difference between God and a human being or a horse being, right? In the sense that one, in order to be a human being, one must have a body, right? But there's still a common denominator in that you have a immaterial thing with respect. You have an immaterial entity with respect to a human being, but with respect to God, you just have an immaterial mind, right? So that's the view. I don't see the dishonesty.
Oh, the dishonesty that I was talking about is that when you talk about what is supernatural, you have to be more specific, because there are things that we could call supernatural that are beyond what we know about how nature works right now. And those things have nothing to do with minds or with making things or creating things or with cursing people or with disease or with praying or anything like that. All the things that they're talking about, their whole supernatural bag is all in the anthropic or anthropomorphic uh, bag. So this is entirely anthropic, right? So they're talking about minds doing something supernatural. There are other ways that supernatural could happen. I mean, there could be some weird thing out there that doesn't have a mind, that's just, somehow spraying supernatural pellets at us and screwing our reality up in these little localities, right? So, I mean, you have to abstract away from supernatural and ask what is supernatural. And what I'm saying that they're doing that is dishonest is that, well, they're being dishonest with themselves, because they're always talking about this man mind sort of, man building things, man in his garage building things, apes sharpening rocks. I mean, we do things with tools. Okay, it's like, who the hell is it? Husserl with the ready at hand. Basically, we see the entire universe in or our phenomenal perception is based on the fact that we make things, that we can grasp with our hands, and we can create. Right? We can take dust and we can pile it in a nice little pile, and we can put a little water on it, and we can create a little triangle with it, right? So we make things. So what I mean about them being dishonest is they're not admitting that they're talking about a purely anthropomorphic God.
I'm okay. So the two, typically when someone's dishonest, right? They forward a proposition that they don't hold in order to achieve some other aim other than like the sake of finding the whatever true proposition with respect to their interlocutor, right? So like something like so what is it that you're saying something like this, right? Look, the term supernatural is ambiguous, right? It seems like they're just using the word supernatural to mean mind. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm talking about a kind of dishonesty that's in the middle. Like, okay, we have downright liars that are going to lie to you about what they think is true, right? Car salesmen, right? They do it all the time. And then we have self-deceivers. We have the car salesman who actually believes this piece of shit is a good car. So he actually believes the proposition. Well, I'm talking about dishonest in this part. They're dishonest with themselves too. They're talking about supernatural.
It seems to me, Speed, that what you're saying is they're not being fully forthright in what they mean when they say supernatural, and how it's really just a reflection of everything that humans are and humans do.
Right.
Yeah.
They're committing a sin that I think is even greater.
But let's just say that what they mean by supernatural is, or non-natural, is just a mind, right? Now, I don't really see that if they had arguments to support why minds are non-natural. Do you still think that? And let's just grant them for the sake of argument, right? Grant them that minds are non-natural, so we're now granting them everything, right? Do you think there would still be self-deception if it were true that minds are non-natural?
Yeah, they're still being dishonest about about there's anthropic supernatural that man are made up stories, are just so stories about supernatural, and that's what humans do. But there's a whole big world of supernatural out there that we could come up with. If we're really good sci-fi writers, we could come up with a whole lot of other scenarios other than there is a human-like mind in the sky or an immaterial mind, right? So they're in this little thing here. And I forget how you worded the question to me exactly, but you asked, would I call them dishonest? Well, I'm saying that they're, let's not call it dishonest. Let's call them naive.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't contest that so much. I'm just saying that I don't think maybe I would agree that the term non-natural or especially the word supernatural is a very problematic term, right?
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that typically there are two categories of immaterial things in philosophy, right? And that's that's contentious, of course, right? It's contentious, but typically it's either something like abstract objects are typically taken to be immaterial. Now, and then there's a lot of even more contentious. That am I saying that wrong? Contentious is going to be the minds, right? There are going to be a significant portion of philosophers, I think that there's like, okay, well, it's not crazy to think that minds are immaterial, though I disagree, right? So those are typically like people like that for the Kalam cosmological argument will give arguments for why mind is non-material and thus in the possible realm of causes of the universe, right?
Yeah, but okay. When you say material and immaterial, that's the other word that's kind of like problematic, because most materialists today are actually like physicalists. They don't really believe in material is all there is, right? Because now we know about quantum fields and we know that there's something really spooky happening outside of the Big Bang or outside of the universe, right? Or around. We can't even talk.
What do you mean outside of the universe?
Yeah.
That statement is incoherent.
Beneath it, within it, like there is a structure of the universe. Like we have this oh damn it, I have an eraser. We have this 4D space time, right? Okay.
Are you talking about like fields stacked on top of each other, essentially?
Well, no, I'm talking about we have 4D space time, and 4D space time is not going to give us the whole story. Basically, there is another type of mathematics outside and around physical, around what we know right now, that has other, we could call it other dimensions, but that has so much, that is so goddamn loaded that basically the dimensionality of the universe could well be infinite. I mean, it could be 26, it could be 92. We don't fucking know.
It's probably 4 though.
But I mean, our mathematics, when we start to understand how this universe basically expanded and what it's doing, and when we understand dark matter and everything else, we are going to understand a whole lot more.
Of course,
the particles we have right now and the fields that we understand right now.
Well, that would be assuming that there's going to be more. There are probably particles for dark matter.
It'll be more complex, and hopefully it'll be like like one simple little, A plus B, right? I equals A plus B, or everything equals A plus. Hopefully it'll be a simple formula, but
it won't. I mean, have you seen the Lagrangian density of the standard model?
Yeah, I know. So anyway, this idea of material. So when you say mind is immaterial, what the hell are we talking about? Like, what is?
Well, it's true that if the term of supernatural or non-natural is problematic, then it's also true that the term natural or material is problematic. In the same way that if you don't have a good understanding,
I don't think so.
Well, one second. If you don't have a good understanding of what's right, you're not going to have a good understanding of what's wrong, right? So I think that if you take your concept of natural and just negate it, you'll get your concept of non-natural, right? So now this is I've done a lot of research on what it means to say like a material thing or a natural thing, and it is all over the place in the literature. It is not an easy thing to come to get the right notion or what we mean by the concept, right?
I'm assuming you mean in the philosophical literature, because it's most certainly not in the literature of the physical sciences.
No, but it's a philosophical question when you ask about a concept, right? It's not
not always, and I don't think the philosophy is the
you and
only
I
thing
mean
that can
something
answer
different
it.
about you and I mean something different than when we say philosophy.
No, I just said that philosophy isn't the only way to answer things.
No, when it comes to meaning, right? You and I just have a different definition of philosophy. We don't disagree,
No.
right?
Okay, let's not go down this rabbit hole, you two.
Well, I just mean when I talk about the Western tradition of philosophy, analytic philosophy, what philosophy does under the tradition that I follow is we understand meaning. That's all that is to me. Right now, you must have a different definition.
Yeah.
I don't recall denying that. I just said philosophy isn't the only way to answer questions.
No. What you were disputing, right, was that science could understand the meaning of natural.
It can. It has to have a meaning of natural in
Well,
order to
you
study
and
the
I-
natural world. I mean, science can't work if we can't define the things that we use to do science.
That's not.
And
I don't
science comes up with their own particular definition. You have to remember, science is a philosophy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you and I
So-
are just using the terms differently. There might even not even be disagreement, right? But I'm just saying that with respect to the analytic tradition, right? That we just study meaning, right? So if a scientist were to understand the meaning of natural, under my definition, they're doing philosophy, right? Under your definition,
Well,
they're
yes,
not.
science is
Right.
a philosophy. I don't disagree with that at all.
No, I'm not saying that they're doing science. I'm saying they're doing philosophy.
Yeah, but science is a philosophy. So when
You-
you're doing
I don't
science,
know what
you're
you
also
mean by
doing
philosophy. If you and I don't share the same definition, so I don't know what you mean.
Well, then you must have a narrow definition of philosophy.
I told you, look, the Western tradition of the very common Western tradition of philosophy is called analytic philosophy. That's the kind
Well,
of,
that's a type of philosophy, but analytic philosophy
and I'm
isn't
just telling you, that's what I
philosophy.
mean. That's
So
what
you're
I'm telling-
speaking within a particular framework within
Of course.
philosophy, not philosophy in general.
Hey guys,
I'm speaking about philosophy in
hey,
general.
hey,
I
Science
don't know what
falls
you
into
mean
that.
by it, right?
Okay.
I just don't know
I
what-
mean, as
Oh,
Wikipedia
oh,
defines
oh.
it, philosophy is the
That's
study
what
of general and fundamental questions, such as those about reason, existence, knowledge, values, mind, and language.
Science doesn't really ask about those questions.
Science is an element of the set philosophy. Is the best way I can word
I
it.
think speed of sound wants to.
yeah, okay. Andrew wanted to keep this on topic, so let's not fucking try to figure out what philosophy is. Okay,
Yeah,
let's not go down that little.
I think it's too deep a rabbit hole. At this
Yeah.
point.
Okay. So this is kind of like Andrew's request for the stream. So we're going to keep it on topic. So let's not you two argue about shit that you're not going to resolve without me using my pad and explaining it to you. Okay.
Yeah, I'd love to go down philosophy at some point. I like philosophy, but like
Okay.
I feel like
Yeah.
we should stick to one topic if that's okay with you, Leo.
Yeah. Okay. You said not naturalism. Now, where the hell we're going? Oh, okay. The immaterial mind would be something that is not natural, right? So you're saying we have naturalism, and we don't know what the bounds of this are, Danny.
The bones of what?
Naturalism. We don't know all about it. So how do we
as a-
say not naturalism how do we say not naturalism if we don't know what natural is?
Well, I agree, right? I think that you have to understand one to understand the other.
Yes.
Right. So, in the same way that if you're wanting to distinguish right and wrong, you have to know what right is to know what wrong is, because wrong is just not right. You know. So I guess the way I understand what is natural is similar to what Donald Davidson would understand natural, as well as others like McDowell and Quine, right? Where it's something like that which is governed, the causal interactions are governed by laws, right? That there's law-like relations, ultimately speaking, when there's causal relations between material, two things, that those two things are going to be material, right? That's how I understand. So if we understand material in that way, then what it means to say something is not natural is to say that when there's a causal relation, right, it's not going to be understood in terms of natural laws. And I think that's, for me, the most useful understanding. However, there's no consensus, right, in philosophy of science and metaphysics about what natural is. It's one of the most horrible terms, right, to kind of flesh out in metaphysics, right? And I mean, you have people like McDowell and Fiona. I forgot her last name. Who are I'll just say Fiona for right now. I forgot her last name. I'll look it up later. But she's a naturalist, but she's a theist, so she has a very different understanding of what natural means, right? And I don't understand it, right? But yeah, the way that I understand, if something's natural, right, we're talking about a causal tendency or a causal relation that's ultimately understood in terms of natural laws, right?
You're talking about Fiona Ellis.
Yes, Fiona Ellis. Yes.
Okay.
So if I'm understanding you, Danny, correctly, are you basically like, I guess I would define material as having to do with matter and energy, and natural as having, or natural / physical having to do with our understanding of the laws, as you were saying. Is that kind of what you're saying? That
Well,
something?
there's a
Oh.
problem because you have to talk about what exists ontologically, and then differentiate that from relational properties. For instance, take two physical particles that one physical particle orbiting another, right? Now, there we have two things, right? But there's a set of relational properties, right? The movement, the orbiting, right? That can be understood naturally as well, right? So we would say those particles, right, are going to be physical in virtue of following a kind of regularity with respect to their motion and their behavior, right? So that's what makes those particles physical. Now imagine a particle, right, that behaved randomly. There was no rhyme or reason to how it moved.
Electrons?
Well, I think electrons going to, maybe I'm wrong about this. You probably know a lot more, but I would say that most physicists are going to say it's not impossible that the behavior of electrons are going to be governed by, not going to be governed by natural laws. We just may not know all the laws that explain their behavior or something like that. But
all the laws that do explain the behavior of electrons is for, like, the description of what electrons are and what they do is 100% physical.
Well, that means that they
From
are
the
governed
top
by
to
laws.
the bottom.
Well,
They are.
Oh yeah, I'm not disputing that, right? But I'm saying that sometimes it's difficult to ascertain what laws are governing whatever system, but that doesn't mean, therefore, that they're not governed by laws, right? So
Yeah.
the point is that in what sense is it going to be a physical thing if it's known that it's not governed by any sort of laws of behavior, laws of causal interaction, right? I just think that at that point it's just not a natural thing anymore, right?
Well, it's probabilistic. Are you excluding? Where would you include a probabilistic behavior of a particle or like an electron wave in that? What side are you putting that on, supernatural or natural?
Well, so if I fall down the stairs, I'm probably going to break a bone, right? Now, if I break, so I think what that's doing is that, look, we don't have any models of falling downstairs and breaking bones, right? But it's still a physical phenomenon if it's the case that I fall down the stairs and I break my leg, because
Right.
it's reducible, as you've written, right, earlier, it's reducible to things that could be understood in terms of our best scientific theories and models, right?
In principle. Yeah.
Right, in principle, right? But let's just pretend, right, just to understand what it means to say something is a non-natural event, is that if it's in principle not reducible to laws, right, then I just don't see what science has to do with it, right? It's just something that we are not going to be able to model.
Okay, if it's in principle not reducible to laws, you're saying that science couldn't model it. Okay.
Right.
And what do we have? We kind of have examples of that with. Can we actually make predictions with quantum mechanics in principle?
That's a good question. So
Yes.
let's say
Yeah.
that there's in principle something that, well, let's say there's a random and I'm talking about the philosophical understanding of randomness, right? Not like when we roll a die and we say that the outcome is random, we don't mean true randomness, right?
No, we don't.
Right. We mean something
The
like,
word you're looking for would be stochastic.
well, in philosophy,
even-
it's just it's stochastic. It means what?
Stochastic would mean something is truly random.
Well,
Okay. Well, that's interesting.
What is truly random? I mean, do we have any
Uncaused.
examples?
Something that is truly, yes, weak
uncaused,
radioactive decay, vacuum field fluctuations, quantum tunneling are all stochastic. They're truly random. They are, by definition, actually uncaused. There's nothing that determines when these events happened. Yes, that's what
Right.
they are.
So let's say there's a particular beta particle that's emitted, right, and it's random as to when. I'm sorry. Maybe Leo knows a lot more about quantum theory, but the point is that if there's a random event, right, I don't see that if science is in the business of explanation, right, and there's a random event which is just defined as uncaused or unexplained, there's nothing more for science to model or to theorize, right? Because theories are ultimately explanatory, right? So I just don't see. I guess there's a point at which we could. I don't know what it means to say that we observe a random event, because I think that in principle, our observations are going to underdetermine whether it's random or not random. So you're going to have to appeal to different virtues to understand whether something is random. What's the word that you use? Stochastic?
Yes.
Okay. That I have to use that term, but that's what I mean by random true randomness, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So how we establish true randomness is going to be a problem, right?
Okay,
Because
but how could mind be stochastic?
well,
How
so
does mind get
libertarians.
into that?
Well, there's a lot. Okay, so then I would give an example of a non-natural thing if it's the case that we're talking about a phenomena that's fundamentally unexplained, right? And because it's just not in the science is the business of explanation, and that's unexplained, right? Now, with respect to mind, it's going to be according to people like Bill, so like I guess I wouldn't really want to say Davidson is a non-naturalist. In fact, I think he thinks that there's just anomalies within monism. Like he takes his monism to be ultimately, I think, understood physically. Right? There's anomalies in our physical observations with respect to our decisions. Right? And I think there are other philosophers like Akil Bilgrami that take that and say, well, that what we mean there is just non-natural. And I think what they mean there is something like when we make a decision, right, there's not going to be a law that governs the outcome of the decision, right? Whether it's success or failure, because if there is, right, there's not a sense in which there's a possibility of success or failure with respect to our belief or desires, right? And I think that qualifies as a non-natural phenomenon, right? But that's essentially the argument.
Oh, let's see. Davidson, I forget what his philosophy of the mind contributions were.
Right there, 2.2, anomalism of the mental, right? His view is called, I think, anomalous monism, right? Now, he's not a dualist, to my understanding, but he's inspired a lot of dualists, right? Because he points to the norms of rationality as being completely different from the natural laws, right? But I think for him, it's not sufficient for him to say that mental events are therefore of a different category. They're not. That's to say, he doesn't think he's committed to dualism as a result of the distinction.
Yeah. Oh, let's see. What else does he?
Why I think at this point, I think would you guys agree with me at this point that our language is not yet sufficient to explain what we mean in these kinds of situations? Like,
Human language is very limited.
No, I disagree completely. But I think we can know what we mean, right? So if I say something like, that if I really believe, right, that the mind is non-natural, I mean something by this, right? Now, I might fail with respect to my communication, right? As a lot of people are, right? It's not like when we say, I think everyone probably has a similar concept of the natural in this room, right? But when we try to communicate our concept, we can fail with respect to the communication. And that's where language breaks down, right? That you have to practice, right? Really using and being successful with your language in terms of tracking what you mean by or what you hold to be true. And that's, I think, what you're saying, maybe, right? That when I have a concept of the natural and I have a concept of the noun natural, and similarly to you. Now, it's up to us to try to convey using sounds and inscriptions what we mean. And there's a lot of failure with respect to that, even with me. And I mean, even with the smartest people, right, that we would call smart, right? And I think that's probably what you mean by saying that our language breaks down.
Yeah, I think specifically I'm talking about the English language. Like there's not an infinite number of words. Well, maybe that's a whole other discussion. But like, but yeah, I agree. I think that all of us have the same concept of what is natural and what is not natural. At least in the
we could. It could be the case that none of us disagree, but because let's say I'm a motivated reasoner, right, and I want to make one of y'all look bad, right, and so that actually could get in the way of my communication, right? So I say stuff I don't mean, right, and that's where dishonesty comes in, right? So the worst thing about a dishonest interlocutor, right, is that they actually add confusion to the whole dialectic because they say things they do not mean in order to achieve some other aim, right? So that's where one way we could be where our language breaks down. Well, yeah, our language might break down in terms of us not knowing how to communicate. But when we're in these discussions, people say things that they don't mean, and that confuses the whole endeavor, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
So,
All right, guys, really quickly. I got to take off. I got some stuff I got to do around the house. So it's been fun.
Sure.
Be sure to tune into Erica's debate tonight because, oh, God, that's going to be epic. It's going to be so epic.
You live in a house?
What did you think I lived in? A fucking trash can?
I wasn't sure. Okay, I'm just surprised.
Oh, why? Because I'm black. I can't have a house, huh?
well,
Jesus.
you're young. You're young. Most young people do not own houses.
Nailed it. Nailed
Well,
it.
I don't own the house, but I do live in one.
Oh, okay.
Alrighty. I'm out of here, guys. Take it
I'm
easy.
being a dick. Goodbye, Leo. Forget philosophy and get on with your life. Yeah, Wittgenstein was about to die when he wrote his last few pages. What was it? Which book was he writing when he died? Wittgenstein.
Not the Tractatus. That's probably one of his most famous works. I think that was earlier. I don't know what his last work was.
The big one with the word games and all that stuff. I can't remember. But anyway, he was like writing just a few days before he died, actually. He was kind of like, fuck philosophy. It was almost like he had given up. But he gave up in a wonderful way. He managed to get us to look at a whole bunch of stuff. Word game. Okay. So, I don't know. Well, back at
Philosophical Investigations, is that the last one?
Yes, Philosophical Investigations.
I had to look that up.
Yeah.
I didn't know,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, and this Ellis, Fiona Ellis,
You've heard of her?
No, rings a bell, but I actually had to look Fiona up too. So I will check Fiona out.
Yeah, she's a naturalist, but she's also a theist. So I don't know what she means by naturalism in that case, right?
I'm interested in that. Davidson and McDonald and Klein, I had books by them, but
yeah, McDowell is a naturalist too, but then he accepts weird phenomena that most people would not qualify as natural. So, like, it's just the naturalism is a very and materialism in general. Like when I opened it was about a year or two ago. When I started trying to understand the distinction, I really didn't. I looked at the encyclopedia of my encyclopedia of philosophy, not the Stanford one. I have a physical copy of one of materialism, and it was actually. Let me read it. It's very short.
okay.
Let me go get it for 1 second.
Are we straying too far off, Andrew?
No, and it's okay. I mean, since Leo just left, I think philosophical stuff is okay at this point.
Well, we'll bring it back a little bit, and
sure.
And,
yeah, no worries.
Try to address some of these earlier concerns about evolution and how methodological naturalism makes a hell of a lot more sense, basically.
Yeah, I think you gotta get down to the foundations in order to understand the top level.
I have my thing here. Let me read out what materialism is here, and
Sure.
and it this is just a testament to show that like whatever consensus means in philosophy is that it's just a very, very problematic term.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Because, well, for one thing, I like to call it physicalism, and I like to call it propositional physicalism. So prop physicalism, basically, because physicalism. Well, go ahead and read it.
I'm almost there. I got to materialism. I just need to get to material. Material. Wow, there are so many pages dedicated to this. Okay. Y'all go ahead and talk while I find it.
How about them cubs or whatever? How about them raccoons?
Oh no.
No, raccoons are going to evolve and compete with us at some point. I'm pretty sure.
Perhaps. I'd bet more on oh my gosh, that's a frightening image that just came to mind.
Raccoons walking upright, big raccoons.
No, walking dolphins.
Oh, there you go. That is frightening. Yeah, I think that they got the problem that they don't really give a shit to compete with us because they have their as long as we stay the hell out of the ocean, they might start sinking ships. I don't know.
Yeah. Dolphins. I only learned this recently. Dolphins. Most people think of dolphins as like cute and playful. They are in certain circumstances, but like they're they can be very aggressive towards like other species of dolphins, and they attack one another, and they're very territorial.
Right. See, raccoons have these fingers, and if it weren't for fingers, it isn't our brains, but it's our fingers that make us what we are.
Yeah.
Our brains kind of developed to support our fingers doing things.
Yeah, I think that's one theory of why our brain grew so much during
Yeah.
our evolution.
Yep, and raccoons have these fingers, and they worry me. I just saw a video of a woman that found a raccoon in a Christmas tree.
Are those fingers or are those sundew plants?
Oh, they're fingers, but odd ones, odd fingers. We have some articulated wrist bones back here, which are important. But, these are fingers with pads. Imagine some alien creature, and he's got, instead of one, he's got three bones in his forearm.
Oh, that's another frightening image that just came to mind. What if you had an alien, but it had an arm that wasn't like our fingers, but it had like something similar to like a starfish for an arm?
Okay, I can't. I'm having difficulty
You want me to try to? Do you have the same? Do you have like the 6-7 volume set of encyclopedia? I've got an old.
Yeah, the 7 to 8. Yeah, there's one, because I have materialism, but I remember reading Material Simpliciter, but I don't know, because I don't have my. I wonder if I looked up natural instead, but I don't think I really thought I looked up material, but maybe I just have to. There was a part of this that that I may have missed. Let me see.
I'm grabbing. What the hell we have? Oh, we'll just grab a random book. We got Blackwell's Companion to the Philosophy of the Mind.
I have an older. It's outdated to me, right? Isn't it like in the 90s?
Yeah.
It's just, I do have that.
Yeah, I inherited one from a friend of mine. It's like a 8-volume set or something.
Is it the one with W.H. Newton Smith? Is that edited by Newton Smith?
I'd have to walk into the library to get it, but
okay.
You guys keep your old philosophy books away from me.
471. Let's see here. Blackwell's Companion. Ooh, I got notes in here. What the hell? What am I doing?
I just noticed your drawing kind of looks like an owl with a bird of paradise head.
It can be whatever you want it to be, Andrew. It's an alien. It's a highly evolved thing that's going to.
Okay, I'm going to look up natural. Maybe that's what I read, but it's been, like I said, it was a while ago, and so maybe I'm misremembering. But I remember being like, "Oh, okay, this does not help."
Yeah, this is by who the hell did this?
The encyclopedia.
No, this Blackwell has all these different entries, and this one is by. I'm trying to figure out who it's by. Reductive physicalism. God, I have read this stuff because I got highlights all over.
Wait, is it it's not the one, the Blackwell Companion to Substance Dualism. That's not what you're reading, right?
A Companion to the Philosophy of Mind. Blackwell Companions to Philosophy. It's by Samuel Gutenplan.
Do you have the editor? That's all I know. The editor.
That is the editor. Says Samuel Gutenplan.
Okay, no, we have two different Blackwell. I wonder what years does yours date to?
Oh, let's see. It looks pretty.
1 second, let me get mine.
95. That's new as philosophy goes. No, 98.
Okay, I just got mine. No, the one that I was thinking of was the Companion to Science, not Mind.
Oh,
so yeah, you and I have the same one. This dates to
98, 95, something like that.
Let me look. 93.
Oh,
I have 94. Copyright 94. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. So yours is more up to date than it looks like.
Yeah, they have materialism under physicalism eliminated. Let's see. Term physicalism has been used in a variety of family resemblance related ways in recent philosophy of the mind. The same is true of materialism. Often two terms are used interchangeably.
You see, the fact that there's a family resemblance points to its lack of, I guess, it's just kind of its nebulous nature. It's like defining what a sport is, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And it just seems like a very difficult thing to do. And in the end may just result in a non-disagreement when there was an apparent prima facie disagreement. Well, that's redundant, but
Yeah.
you know,
I actually have that bookmarked because I've had a problem with the problem I have with physicalism. The way people define it is there's physicalism, and they always add this this little what do you call it? I don't know. Is rejoinder the right word? I'm not sure what would be the right word, but they always add physicalism. They always say there exists nothing. I'm not going to do predicate or predicate logic properly, but there exists nothing that is not material, right? So
is that your view?
No,
Okay.
not at all.
Okay.
I suspect that's the case, but I don't have to say that because I don't know that that's not the case. So I'm agnostic.
Agnostic to it,
right?
Yeah.
And I'll say propositional physicalism is everything that we know in the right now, right around us, right now. The stuff we're concerned about in science and in evolution is all covered under these propositions, and we have not found anything out here that breaks it yet. And when we do, then we'll include it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have to make that extra claim that, there is nothing non-physical. But then when you talk about what is non-physical, because right now physical concerns fields and, the possibility of multiple dimensions, like even infinite dimensional geometries. I mean, it really is hard to imagine what would be outside of that definition of physical when you lighten it up. I mean, we're not talking about concrete or lead or balls of dough, right? When we're talking about physical, we're talking about all of what physics studies right now, and that is so bizarre that we couldn't. The thing I deny, the way I establish my naturalism is I look around me and in my local environment, my locality, basically, I define these physical laws and naturalism, and physical laws and naturalism seem capable of explaining in principle everything that's happening to my life and around me. And in fact, as long as I can remember. Okay. So I go from that, and from that I call that R1. That's reality one. That's sort of our natural reality, the reality that we all deal with. We all feed ourselves. We all drink water. I know you do. If you denied that, I'd really suspect you, right?
I drink soda. I really don't drink water.
Well, but
yeah, I know what you mean. I'm just kidding, but I understand what you meant.
Water in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, I take that and I look at that. Okay, what am I? So everything I know about myself in this, locality is that I am a biological organism. And I adhere to those rules as well because I study biochemistry, right? So I am a biological organism. So I hash out everything about my mind because I know that my mind is, pretty much up here and only related to this biological organism. I know if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I'm not going to be arguing with you anymore. Okay, I know this. Or I'm pretty sure of this.
Yeah, but it seems like everything that you're saying is also consistent with there being a dependency relation between your body and your mind.
A dependency relation. Yeah, there is. Yeah, because I don't think my mind would be happening without my brain and body.
I'm a dualist, right? So I think that there's a dependency relation, right? So if I get hit by a bus, I don't think I'm going to be talking with you either because my body is destroyed, right? And my mind can't. I mean, there's various arguments for this, but it could be the case. It's plausible to me that the mind depends on the body, right? And so if that's the case, but that leaves room for dualism, right? And so the point is that I've never really understood. Well, I understand the intuition, right? That if I stick my fingers in your brain, all sorts of things will happen in your mental life, right? But that's also true that if you and I were to meet in person, that if I were to awkwardly hold your hand, right? That would bring, very maybe just some discomfort, and you would think all sorts of things, right?
It would
So
be awkward.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. But the point is that I think that there, to me, while there might be a more serious change, detrimental change with respect to me sticking my fingers in your brain, that's going to be as powerful of an argument as me holding your hand and then saying that, look, your mental life is different now. Therefore, your mental life is identical to your physical, for your physicality, right? And to me, it seems kind of a weak argument, right?
Yeah. When first of all, okay, your brain right here, and your body out here, and you remember in the debate with those two gentlemen, uh, and your locality. Basically, I define mind as being in this locality around me, being in the roughly 50 feet around me. And in some ways, there's a little avenue right now, but of course, it's hashing itself out electronically in my speakers. But in some ways, I'm out wherever in the hell you are too. So my mind includes you in all of these things, and that is called the enworlded mind theory, and it's a word that I created, and I haven't heard anybody
It
use.
seems like it's just you're talking about the phenomenal world or something.
Well, okay, I had an approach that I was gonna use when I talked to you, but I don't quite want to use it yet because I think I want to defer a lot of this discussion to a just me and you session later on.
Okay, well that's fine.
But yeah, we're going to talk about what mind is. But let's try to get back to Andrew at some point. But first of all, I want to ask you a question. You were on Praise's stream the other night with Gavin, and he kept muting you.
Well, I left, but yeah, he said something. He mischaracterized my view, and I corrected him. But the guy is just a worthless interlocutor.
Yeah.
Absolutely worthless interlocutor.
He was saying that you weren't that you were young.
Yeah, and I am young, but
how young are you?
I'm 27, right? But
oh shit! Well,
yeah.
He was saying you were under 25, like you were.
It didn't matter, right?
It didn't matter. No.
Yeah, I was. That just shows that he's a waste of my time, right?
Yes, exactly.
So I left like very soon after. I don't even know if I was muted. But
yeah, you were muted a lot.
Oh, really? Yeah. But the point is that there are a lot of those people on both sides, right? And because philosophically speaking, I don't really belong to many categories, right? I make philosophical enemies of many atheists because a lot of atheists are naturalists, and then I make enemies of theists because I don't hold to any concept of God, right? I can't make sense of the concept, right? But
Good.
so I don't. I'm sort of a philosophical maverick, and I make a lot of enemies in that way, right? But and so throughout my journeys, I just see, there's that kind of person, and they occur on both sides of the aisle. And as soon as I encounter them, if I can't humiliate them, then I leave, right? So
okay. Yeah, Gavin was trying to humiliate us because he claimed he was a doctor. Well, it turns out he's trained in acupuncture in New Zealand.
How did you figure that out?
They sent us his certificate, and you can also find him online. You can find information about him.
That's so embarrassing.
Yeah, and he's like, I don't know, he runs some kind of marketing company, and he's done all kinds of entrepreneurial type of. Well, look up his name in Google in New Zealand, and you will find a very interesting story about this man. He's pretty incredible. Anyway, he's a joker, and he was trying to say that because we're not doctors. I don't have any formal training, but I spent a long time studying neuroscience about, oh God, it's got to be about maybe 8 years ago already, and biochemistry, molecular biology, and all that. And I'm not without knowledge.
Yeah, I teach biology, but only high school biology.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, but I would never say I'm an expert. I know how to teach kids about what the structure of DNA is, and that's as far as it goes. And but I'm also a grad student. I'm getting my master's in philosophy. I already have a bachelor's degree in philosophy. So I'm doing school, but I don't like to tout my if they are considered credentials. My background, because that ends up being used against you. It's like,
right.
because then they start saying stuff like, well, you have a philosopher's point of view, so it's just not applicable. And then I have to argue for why why it is in the purview of philosophy, and they only are saying that in the first place because it's a way of responding to the point of view that I'm coming from, right? And so I don't typically like to tout it, right? But and it actually works against me in many cases. But yeah, I think that, like Leo, for instance, when the fact when he said that, well, scientists are to do this and that, and so philosophy can go as far as this and that. I have to do so much work to show why. Look, this is just a semantic game. You mean I think we do agree, ultimately speaking, but all what I mean by philosophy is some kind of like there's even you've probably heard of the subject meta philosophy, and there's disagreement about what philosophy is, right?
Right.
And so I just told him, look, this is what I mean by the term. I just mean that when we analyze concepts, we're doing philosophy, right? We're not studying, we're not in the lab, we're not testing repeatable things, right? Like, we're not doing any of that. We're thinking about what we mean by the words that we're saying and the propositions, the kind of sentences that we are claiming to believe in, and that's all I mean by philosophy, right?
Right. And I would agree strongly with that. Basically, philosophy is about how we form concepts about the world.
Exactly. Yeah.
And how we can be very, very wrong about it.
Yeah.
And I used to what I call it philosyphilis sometimes.
Philosyphilis.
Yeah, I mean, I would make fun of philosophy, but then most of what I've done in the last 15 years has been philosophy.
Yeah.
And and so I make fun of it, or I'll take a dump on philosophy, but we need it. I mean, basically, we have to try to abstract ourselves out of these concepts and take a look. So we're looking with philosophy. We are looking at the concepts themselves, the semantics, the way we talk, the way we think, what we are in relationship to this world. So very important.
One of the most common frustrations that I have with people that they when I present, like, whether to be theist or atheist, it doesn't matter, right? I always am confronted with this, right? Oh, this is just semantics, right? And so I have to actually rehearse a response to that, because I know that it's not just semantics, right? So, for instance, if I present the problem of evil, which I think that I think the problem of evil is a very good argument against the existence of God, right? Especially to Christians and monotheists. I say, look, there's God is good, and so he wouldn't allow anything that shouldn't happen, but things happen that you would say shouldn't happen. So there's a problem here, right? And then after a few minutes, they start saying stuff like, oh, well, you're just playing word games, right? And of course, atheists do the same thing when I try to show that, look, now I think I take naturalism to be false because of these is what I take the concepts to be, and then they start saying this is just word games, right? So I have to say the proper response, I think, to this is, right, okay, you think it's a semantical issue. What word are we disagreeing about? And they never come up with an answer, because the funny thing is that I get them to accept my terms. And then only after do they say it's a semantic issue. But if it's a semantic issue, then we should have not agreed on the terms, right? It's only a semantic issue when we're disagreeing about what sounds correlate to what concepts, right? And or when inscriptions refer to what kinds of things in the world or truths in the world, right? And so after getting them to accept all these terms and definitions, and then only after they say this is a semantic game, right? I ask them, what term do we disagree about? And there's never an answer, right? So it's just it's a ploy to get out of the objection in many cases, right?
Yeah, this this business of information and evolution right now. Basically, it's something that's being studied, through biosemiotics. Have you heard of biosemiotics?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So right now there's just, there's raging battles to try to figure out what the hell information is in DNA. And this would be a good idea to bring Andrew back in.
Well, I think it's something going to be, it's going to be something called, I think it's called covariant information, right? Yeah, there's like covariance. So there's that kind of information that's with respect to meaning, right? So if I tell you it's raining outside, that means something, namely because of what I intend. I'm using that utterance or that sentence to convey a particular truth. That's not covariance, right? That's
Yeah.
not that, right? That's actual meaning, right? Because it involves a mind, right? Now, but with respect to like in the natural world, we don't take information to be that way. We're talking about some kind of covariance or some correlation. So, for instance, smoke covaries with fire or heat, right?
Right.
So, smoke would be information for heat, right? And so, and that's the kind of information that's present in, I think, biological systems. But what ID theorists do, or what young Earth creationists do, is they equivocate, right? Yes,
Right.
there's meaning with respect to the inscription that I've written here, right? But that's only because we're talking about that kind of information is not the same kind of information as when we say that smoke is information for fire, informs me that there's fire, right? Or that a particular sequence of codons, right, refer to or covary with a particular sequence of amino acids, right? There's
Sure.
covariance there, but it's nothing to do with meaning in the sense that when we're talking about linguistics or communication, right?
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything. It is, and we're not
It
entirely.
covaries. There's
Yeah.
covariant, right? And so there's a big equivocation, and I'll give it to them. When I do look at a biological system, namely in the nucleus and with respect to replication, transcription, and translation, it intuitively seems like a code that we would develop. I can grant that, but that doesn't get us to that. Therefore, there's a mind because what
Right.
they're what there could be a possible naturalistic explanation, and thus there's just a bunch of covariance rather than anything that has to do with an intention or meaning, right? And so
Yeah.
they're going to have to provide an argument for why their observations track the meaningful sense of information rather than the covariance information, and there's no such argument. There's no such argument, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like John Maddox in this video, that short video that he did the other day, he says it is literally a code. So, and my question was, why did he put literally in front of it? What does that imply? That it's literally when we call something a code, or if we call something an automobile, we're classifying a whole range of different kinds of objects, and we're calling it all an automobile. We might call an SUV. We might say a Jeep. We might say, some tank. We could call a tank an automobile. So anyway, it's a concept, right? And code is a concept that we're applying. So what would it mean to say it's literally an automobile?
No, I talked to him about his argument.
You talking to Maddox when?
Maddox, you talking about John Maddox?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I talked to him for hours, right?
Oh my God. Do you have a link?
Well, a couple things, right? Number one, we're on good terms, right? Personally,
You and John?
yes. We're on good terms.
I didn't know that another human being could be on good terms with John.
Well, but the point is, I completely think that his argument doesn't go through, and I had a hard time getting anywhere philosophically speaking, because what tends to happen now. Look, we are on good terms, and if he can hear this, right? Look, I think we can still be friends, right? But
we love John.
The fact of the matter is that what ends up happening when I provide an argument is that he starts to psychologize me, right?
Yeah.
And I just don't see the relevance of my psychology to.
Okay, where did this talk happen?
There's a few of them, right? Now,
do you come on as Danny, or do you have another label?
Danny or Scrungy, right? That's my. But
Scrungy? Okay.
Yeah, there's it. We didn't get that far because I was in his lion's den, and it was easy. And it wasn't just him. Actually, he wasn't even the main issue. It was a guy named Nephilim.
Oh, Nephilim Free.
Oh, he's horrible. Okay.
He's the creator of the Bukkake moon hypothesis.
Yeah, I talked to him for hours, and he is probably one of the worst interlocutors I've ever talked to. Right?
I had a debate with him on, I think, on proteins and whether or not whether or not proteins could amino acids could change.
Well, we debated the problem of evil, and
Oh my God.
and I got him. I managed to push him to a corner where I got him. I said to him, "You're not a Christian, right?" Because he asked me are there moral things? Like, are things immoral? Can things be moral? And I'm like, wait, when you ask that question, moral means to you in accord with God's commands, right? So if you're just asking me if God exists, are there things that are in accord with God's commands? Then yes, there are moral things. And he hated that answer for some reason, right?
Yeah.
I hated it, right? And that's where the conversation broke down, right? But he said that's not what I mean by moral. Then I'm like, well, then you're just not a Christian, right? Like, I just don't know what you would mean. Or you take you take one of the horns of the Euthyphro dilemma, and you think that moral is actually not construed in terms of God's desires or commands, and that's like a heretical view.
Yeah.
You know. So anyway, he hated me with deep passion, right? But
Were you on Maddox's channel?
yeah, Maddox's channel. Yeah.
You were on Maddox. Do you know how long ago that was? I'm going to be obsessed with it until I find it.
Well, that conversation he did not upload.
He didn't.
No, he did not upload that conversation. Now, there was another one where that it is uploaded, right? And that had to do when he first brought up his argument. I granted him. Now, his argument is actually not formally valid. It's not even a real syllogism, but I granted that it was valid. I think I understood what he meant, right? Some people say, and they give the argument in natural language. And so I granted him the validity of the argument, but I'm saying, why would anyone agree to the first and fifth premise, right? That they're going to disagree on them. So it's just not sound, right? And I don't remember the conversation after that, but I think he got irritated. But so let me link that for you.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to say, but the problem, this whole thing about information, and for one thing, the part of the DNA that's information is only 1.3% that has codons, right?
That they would say, that like a lot junk DNA. Is that what you're referring to? That,
no, I'm not referring to. I don't like the term junk DNA because it really doesn't make any sense. But 1.3% of the protein is codons. Or 1.3. No, I'm sorry, I misspoke. 1.3% of the genome is protein codons. The rest of the genome is not. Well, I guess there are codons. Not really. They're not.
Do you mind if I go to the bathroom? It's an emergency. Okay, I'm gonna go. I'll be right back. Okay.
Okay. Anyway, Andrew, don't you think that's significant that 1.3% basically are codons? Hang on a second here. Let me get a proper. Okay, so we have 1.3% are codons, and they transfer into basically. So you go from the code into an amino acid, basically in an amino acid, right? Are you with Andrew? Are you with us yet, or did you fall asleep? Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Only 1.3% is a code. The rest is not a code. I mean, if it translates into RNA, it isn't a codon. It's not using codons to transfer between DNA and RNA, right? So the introns are nothing like codons at all. The introns basically are big fields of kind of a lot of random stuff, and then there's like a pivot.
Okay, sorry, I'm back. No, I think a lot of this DNA, RNA, the genes, and even cosmology, I never get that far with anyone because I think that my view of the mind convinced me to saying that they can't be evidence for minds, right? So minds can't be falsified. So if there's an entity that exists that can't be falsified, there can't be evidence for it, right? So I just don't. So when that's typically where I discuss, I can grant them like all sorts of things, any physical theory that they want, right? It just doesn't matter, right? Because I just don't think there's a difference between saying there's no evidence for God and saying there can't be evidence for God. I take the latter, right? But they're also, now at the same time, if there can't be evidence for God, there also can't be evidence against God, right? And I'm fine with that view, right? I just don't think it makes any sense to say there's evidence for or against God. I don't think that makes any sense to me, right? Now, so I never really talk about the DNA and the information stuff. I'm like, okay, grant it all, right? But except that if you say that it's information in the meaningful sense, you beg the question, right? Because if it's meaningful, right, then there's an agent behind it, right? I don't understand what it would mean to say that something has meaning and there not be an agent.
Well, Eugene Koonin comes up with a definition of meaning for DNA, basically, which is kind of interesting. Because if you look at, I'm not sure how far you want to get into this, but if you look at DNA, 1.3% of it basically translates into proteins, and there's a whole other pile that is not code-like that basically determines what's in that proteome, and also determines. Oh my goodness, what did I just do? I just did something, and I don't know how to undo it. Oh, I undid it. Okay, it determines what is in that phenotype, and the phenotype is, like I have 5 fingers, and I'm a human, and I have eyeballs and stuff like that. So these are phenotypic features, right? And so this whole thing translates. Well, what Koonin does is he says, okay, you have animal 1's DNA, and you have animal 2's DNA, right? And so we have a dolphin and we have a human being, right? So we have a human and a dolphin. So he says that there's this particular sequence of DNA that is identical in dolphins and humans. So he calls that meaning. And what he means by that is that when you look at mutations in DNA, you'll find that there's a whole lot of stuff that mutates all over the place.
Yeah.
Like there is something called DDX11. It's a DDX11.
Wait, so can you repeat? So he's saying that, like, for instance, you and I have, you and I share genes, perhaps, right? Like,
right.
Okay, but I think there's a problem, right, with what that means. Okay, I don't think any physical thing can be identical to another physical thing apart from itself. I don't think that makes any sense.
Right. No, I agree with that. But anyway, we're saying that, okay, that sequence of information, okay, like information is basically how two things are connected or related in space.
Like the covariant sense of information.
Yeah.
1 second, my parent, I really am interested. My dad is really he's texting me furiously.
Oh,
so
okay.
He needs some information. Speaking of which, so give me a second.
Sure. Yep. Are you familiar with Koonin's definition of meaning, Andrew? Yeah.
Not particularly.
Okay, Eugene Koonin basically, like if we have 2 human beings, and there's this part of the DNA. Oh, maybe I should wait till he gets back before we talk about it. But
yeah,
is this everything you'd hoped it would be, or do you have other issues that you want to get to?
To be honest, I feel like we kind of went over the stuff I want to go over.
Okay.
I feel like we should probably wrap it up soon if that's okay, because I think we probably got other stuff to do, both of us.
Yes, it is Christmas. I think I'm done Christmas shopping. We're in the middle of a major winter storm. I think we're going to get we got ice first. It was 38 degrees. It's going to drop down to -1 in the next 12 hours, and we're supposed to get 12 inches of snow, which threatens the Christmas bunny.
Oh no.
Okay, I'm back. I'm so sorry.
Okay. Anyway, we're talking about wrapping this up, but explaining Eugene Koonin's, we'll just cover this. What he means by meaning is, okay, between you and me, human 1 and human 2, there are some pieces of DNA that have the same exact sequences, very, very close, right, or identical. And of course, we're speaking identity conceptually, right? So we have the same sequences. There are some parts of our DNA that do not have the same, that vary all over the place. And what he means by meaning is the parts that do not vary are important, because in both of us, they allow us to metabolize sugar, for instance, right? And if anything varied, we wouldn't be able to metabolize sugar. So he calls that meaning. So basically, these biologists are trying to find a physical, basically a physical hashing out of what meaning would be. You know, what would meaning be if there were no humans around? That sort of thing.
It just seems like it's going to be something that's understood in terms of like Shannon information or covariance, right? I think that biologists shouldn't try too hard. I don't think they should even be worried, right? Like
no, they're not worried, and that's
okay.
That's not why they're trying. Okay, they're trying.
Okay.
They're trying because we want to build machines that model biochemical systems.
Oh,
and
like
we want to do that
stuff?
because of medicine.
Okay, so it's just a purely practical aim.
It is practical.
Okay,
yeah.
okay. Yeah,
Biosemiotics is practical. It's the thing that creationists misunderstand about biologists is we're not trying to prove evolution.
No,
we don't really give a shit. We're trying to figure out how things happen in living organisms.
Evolution is at this point is just a fact.
Yeah.
Well, do you accept natural selection as being like a plausible explanation for evolution?
Oh, natural selection is just you can't say that. You can't say, oh, it's this or oh, it's that, because you have the problem of, bottom up causation. You got the bottom up and we got the top down, and in the middle we have all these hierarchical things. So there are all of these interactions between layers of what would you call them? How we conceptualize different layers, right? So there's all this stuff going on. And, you have the Lamarckian, basically, which would be the environment changes the genome. They're finding even mechanisms for that. So they're finding top-down causation and bottom-up causation. And if you just talk, natural selection is big. Okay, it's a big filter, right? So it's a big part of it. But you can't say that that's all there is.
Well, I think that the theory should be discarded completely. But I don't.
What?
Wait, what?
But I'm not. That's not to say
I'm booting you from the studio.
Yeah, we could talk about it later. But I think it's not a very good theory. It has no explanatory weight. But
that would be a good conversation.
Yeah, but I don't think that is a problem for evolution, right?
No.
I think that evolution could do just fine without natural selection, but I think that there is like a serious issue with like some of the dogmatism surrounding evolution, because, and I'm not even going to hold them responsible, because I think because it was at some point a contentious thing, right? Something that had to be proven, as you're saying. I think I know what you mean there. That it's kind of been walled off from criticisms, right? And I think there are. Do you know who Jerry Fodor is?
Yeah.
He's an atheist, right? In fact, he had debates against creationists. But I found his argument against natural selection to be persuasive. He wrote a book called "On What Darwin Got Wrong," and attacks natural selection, saying that it succumbs to the same critiques of behaviorism, right? When Chomsky argued against people like Skinner, right, that those sorts of arguments could be formulated against natural selection. I think they go through. And there are also other issues with it. But one thing Fodor says is that this is not some kind of endorsement of creationism, and he accepts common ancestry. So it's not like supposed to be an argument against evolution so much as against natural selection. But it's a conversation for another time, I suppose.
Yeah. So we're going to have to talk about good and evil from a Buddhist point of view. So good and evil, and we're going to have to talk about your dualism, because God, I hope I can talk you out of it. And we're going to talk about natural selection, which so we have like 3 talks we need to do. You're cool. I love having you on the talk. We have good conversations.
Yeah, you're. I have to admit that I didn't expect you to be a nice interlocutor. But
really, why? What did you hear about me?
No, I watched the debate. I mean, I have a lot of bad luck with, just in the same way, like I have a real bad luck with naturalists. I just don't usually. It never gets it. Well, okay, I don't know. I don't really know Leo very well, but a lot of the conversations I have with naturalists end up becoming like the interactions between me and Leo, right?
Mm.
You know, just but you see, you and I think you agree with Leo more so than you agree with me. But you and I, look, so far, like it seems like we're outlining our positions, we're outlining topics we could talk about. We're, I think, agreeing on like things that are not, that don't, like the definition of philosophy, for instance. Nothing really turns on that, right? Like,
Right.
it's not like the definition of philosophy decides dualism or decides materialism, right? Or at least how we use the word is what I'm trying to say. But I don't know. You heard me talk to Leo last time and today, and that's where a lot of the conversations end up like how they come, right?
Yeah.
And with you, it didn't happen, which is very surprising.
Well, you got to remember to pause and listen to the other person every now and then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I try to do that, but I'm not. When someone gets well, I don't know. Okay. Well, if someone, I'm not saying Leo seems this way, but I'm not saying. I'm trying not to insult him. But
he is very passionate.
There you go. Yeah.
There we
When
go.
someone's passionate, I tend to have this horrible habit of matching their passion, right? So it's something that I do need to work on, but and slow down, right? But it seems like you've really nailed. I mean, I don't think I was ever that aggressive towards you. Sometimes to catch people's attention, I act aggressive because
Right.
but once things have calmed down and we've agreed to have a discussion, I'm not near as I don't bite it near as hard, right?
When I run into people that are so passionate that you're spinning in circles and you're not able to complete any particular thought, I usually just shut up. But if you're going to be a philosopher, you should know this. Philosophers and lawyers are in kind of the same bag. They get a lot of shit, but they're real and we fucking need them.
Yeah. I don't know if I need an. I think philosophers might be in a worse position, but because there's like, at least with respect to lawyers, there's a lot of a consensus and established facts about what the law is and stuff, right? But philosophy, the only thing that we really can hold on to, even have to let go sometimes, is like maybe like classical logic. But even then, we have people pushing against classical logic, right? And so there's like a not that much a common foundation is what I'm going to say, right? And so that makes us that puts us in a precarious situation. And then, like, I teach philosophy as well at the high school that I teach, one block of it, and I teach in the South. And philosophy is looked at as a way that causes people to doubt their faith, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm not in the business of at least when I'm being in my classroom, I am scared of people taking my view because I am actually very because I'm in a teacher position, I'm in a authoritative position. I have to work really hard to say, hey, in philosophy, there's no established facts. You don't have to agree with me just because I'm your teacher. You don't have to push back against me, right? Like, and if you hold your faith dearly, right? There are a lot of people that I would say are far more well-read, far more educated than me, that could destroy me in a debate, right? That are theists, right? So please don't take what I say as a reason to believe what I say, right? And so that's something that's I've always been scared. And so with lawyers, at least they have if you're teaching law school, it's not that way, right? There's established facts about what the law is in my state, right? To say that the law isn't that way, right? It's just to say that 2 + 2 is not 4, right? And so that's the precarious situation that I'm in with respect to how people perceive me as an educator and as a philosopher, right? That I'm just a way out of certain kinds of faith systems, and I don't want philosophy to be perceived that way.
Yeah.
Okay, it's cool. So we got 3 talks we got to outline. Definitely that natural selection one. I do not have photos what Darwin got wrong. I've never been that impressed with him, but Maybe I should be.
Well, I think he forwarded functionalism, which
Yeah.
and I'm not persuaded by any of that. But Fodor at least is not biased, right? So you're not like reading, Stephen Meyer or
Right. Right.
Oh, yeah.
right? But he I think in the introduction he speaks to the sort of dogmatic issue with evolutionary biology, and in the sense that, like, first of all, if you look at the reviews of his book, they're highly negative, right? His book was so poorly received, it's not even funny, right? So everyone that read his book, that even on the philosophical side, like the philosophy of science people, really had a lot to say against it. So the consensus is that it's not persuasive, but I
Yeah,
find
it's
it
considered
persuasive.
one of those challenges.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's considered one of those challenge books, challenging the way we think.
Right, revision. Is it revisionary?
Revisionary.
Yeah.
Well, Dennis Noble and his crowd are doing that too, and they're also, but a lot of what they come up with is useful to think about.
Yeah. At the very least, if you don't agree with it, there's certain terms I learned. Like he talks about intentionality, not with a T but with an S. Right. He talks about
Extension and intention.
Yeah, right. Like that's how I became familiar with those terms. And thank God, because those are terms that are used elsewhere in philosophy.
Those are set theoretic terms, and I use it in my theory of the mind too. My theory of consciousness.
He appeals to these concepts. He utilizes these concepts in his argument, so people can learn from. And I want to answer this Icarius or how would evolution work without natural selection? Well, there are other mechanisms of evolution. There's natural selection is just one of like 6 or 5, right, of established mechanisms, right? So there's like random mutation, genetic drift, gene flow. I think it's called non-random mating, right? Isn't that one?
Yeah.
It can work without natural selection, but maybe some of those might collapse into some of the. But no, Fodor accepts common ancestry, so he thinks that common ancestry makes predictions in the fossil record, right? Like it's not like a problem. I think that there might even be a use to the phrase natural selection. It's just not going to. Fodor thinks that, although Fodor might dispute that, but he's just going to say that natural selection is not explanatory.
Well, we might be better off calling it a filter, a mechanistic.
But
filter.
he uses, and it's fine. He uses that term. He uses an example of, I think, a gumball machine, right?
Yeah.
So it's essentially here's his problem, right? You have a gumball machine, a bunch of gumballs with various sizes and colors, and there's a filter, and all you see coming through the filter is blue gumballs with a particular size, so set size, right? And he's saying that, well, obviously there's selection, right? But what is being selected for here? Because there's there's a trait, it being blue, and a size, it having a particular size, right? That are coextensional, right? So is it being selected for because of its blueness, or is it being selected for because of its size? And he's basically saying for every trait that you want to point to, right, to say that it's not that other trait, not the ride-along trait, you're gonna appeal to other theories rather than natural selection. I think that's the basic idea.
Yeah. Well, that would be a good talk. But anyway, we're gonna kind of wrap it up today.
Okay.
And we'll get back to it. Anyway.
Oh, let me link you that video between Maddox and I.
Yeah, please. Do you have I got to give you a wrench so you can link things on my site, and you can put it right directly in chat if you can.
Oh, I will.
Give me a second. I got to find you. When was the last time you said something? Oh, No Direction is here. He's a hell of a philosopher. He doesn't like to be called that though.
Yeah, I understand why. I just put 2 periods. That should help. I just put something in the chat.
Let's see. I don't think. Will it help? Will it work? Nope. I got to give you a wrench. I see. I can give you a wrench now. Oh, I got so many moderators. If you guys start fighting with each other, it's going to be problematic. Okay.
Okay, so I think it's this one. But there's okay, like for instance, I actually really admire Sal Cordova.
YouTube doesn't allow links in live chat anymore? What?
Oh, they're going crazy. If that's true.
John, you're fucking with us, John. John, you and I have to have a talk about the mind too. Have you tried putting it in?
I have to find. There are a lot of his videos. I found it. Okay, so this is. It's long. Okay, but it might be entertaining for you. But I had a. Now keep in mind, I was in the lion's den. Right, there are.
Right.
Everyone there was a theist. Everyone had muting powers. So I had to be very, very careful because it's not even in terms of I wasn't being disingenuous, right? The problem is that if I say something like DNA is not a code, they're going to take that as evidence that I'm a troll or I'm not being honest, right? So I have to be very careful with the language. So you see what I'm saying? Like there's these propositions, there's things that if you say, they're going to say, okay, he's no longer worth it. So I have to be careful not to say those things, right? Because I'm genuinely in the business of trying to be persuasive, right? So because there's a horrible relationship here, right? Or in when you're talking to someone that's disagreeing with you, you could be right about everything that you're saying, but not be persuasive, and you can be very persuasive and be wrong about everything. So the balancing, right? If you want to be persuasive and right, you're juggling, right? You're really juggling.
Yep.
Okay, here's the link. I found it. Okay.
Okay. Did it end up in there? No.
Okay. There it is. Is that it? Yeah. Let me click on it.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. Cool. I will take a look at it. Entertaining. So apparently, Gutsick Gibbon and Erica and Maddox or Cy Gart are gonna take on Maddox and O10. Oh my God, this is gonna be epic.
Yeah.
This is like a Christmas present for me.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Pretty cool. Yeah. Okay. I'll take a look at your conversation with that. I'm absolutely
where it
amazed.
starts? Do you want me to tell you where? Well, I'm in it the whole time, but I don't think we start talking about DNA until later. Do you want, or are you going to watch the whole thing?
Oh, I will find it. I
Okay.
usually spot through them.
Yeah, don't worry.
I just love John Maddox. He's like one of my favorite people in the universe.
Like, I think I know what you mean. I think I know what you mean.
Him and I are like buddies. He won't even speak my name.
Oh no.
Yeah. and he absolutely is totally a bullshit coward and will not come over. He will not. He won't. Like every now and then he has let me into his show, but he's like dropped me out after like 2 minutes. And he absolutely refuses to come here because he wants to be able to mute me. Otherwise, he won't talk to me. And that's why I love John. I just, he's just, me and him are just like bros, I trust me.
Yeah. Do you know someone that's really been helps me with a lot of these concepts and taught me a lot is a guy named Jack Angstrike. Have you heard of him?
No.
Well, you've definitely heard of Darth Dawkins, right?
Oh, I have.
Okay, Darth Dawkins' arch nemesis is Jack Angstrike. Okay, so Darth Dawkins, Jack, and then Angstrike. Let me put that in the chat for you. 1 second.
Sure.
But no, so anyways, they don't talk to each other. He doesn't, because it's basically the same relationship. It's to John Maddox as Jack Angstrike is to Darth Dawkins, right? Something like that.
Yeah, cool. Anyway, throw it in chat, and then we'll end. We'll go backstage for a minute.
Yeah.
Andrew, did we get way off your topics, or are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm excited for the debate tonight. So.
Okay, cool.
I'm just getting a bit tired, and I got some other stuff to do. So.
Yeah, I got some stuff to do too, but I'm not sure what the hell it is at this point. I think shovel snow, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, cool. I'm going to go backstage. We're going to end this, guys. Thanks, everybody out there. And we tried to keep this limited to just a few people today so that it did not just run amok.
Yep.
See you guys out there in the world.
Peace.